There it is. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Living Life Naturally. And today I'm honored to have Dr. Susan Brown, PhD, with me. She is a best-selling author of the Acid Alkaline Food Guide. And actually, she has that translated into 7 languages, and Better Bones, Better Body. She's also a noted researcher, inspirational speaker, and a founder of the Center for Better Bones and Alkaline for Life. In her decades of experience, she has authored more than 1,000 articles and produced hundreds of videos on pH balance, the alkaline diet, and natural bone health. Dr. Brown pioneered the natural approach to bone health for over 30 years, and she was the first to prove that using only natural methods, just the way I love it, nearly every woman can build strong bones for life. So incorporating her research and the latest science, her 6-point natural program, including the alkaline diet, exercise, digestion, detoxification, and the 20 key bone building nutrients, has helped tens of thousands of women take control of their health and enjoy long, active, happy lives. So welcome to my podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So tell our listeners where you're joining us from today.
Well, actually, the Center for Better Bones is located in Syracuse, New York. And I actually am from Syracuse, even though I am an anthropologist and I traveled all over the world, particularly a lot in South America, Central America, ended right back here home in Syracuse.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what got you into this kind of work.
Well, that's a really interesting story. I began as an anthropologist, and I was specializing in studying the cultural anthropology of Central and South America. And I met some very wise people, women actually, who had studied natural healing, acupuncture, homeopathy, herbal medicine. And they helped me to see that some of my health issues could be greatly improved using these natural means. And so I got really interested then. I started studying nutrition. I started looking at diet and disease, which cultures, why do certain cultures have a great deal of heart disease and other cultures have very little? In particular, I got focusing on bone health because probably like in my mid-30s, my grandmother, who I really loved, fell in the bathtub at the age of 101. Now, I always say, I don't know why we left her alone in a bathtub at 101, but we did. She was a very tough, long-lived person. And she fell and broke her hip. And then they put her in bed. I wasn't there then. I was in South America, but they put her in bed and said, okay, do you want to see a doctor? She said, nope, I've seen one before. So she said, no. She said, I've taken care of my boys for 100 years. They can take care of me. And that's what she did. She laid down. She was very acute of her mind. She did not suffer. She watched TV shows of Ronald Reagan. She had a great time. And she said, this is okay. She had her sons take care of her. But I always thought she actually died 1 year to the date from when she fell. And I always wondered how long she would have lived if she didn't have that fracture. Now, she's interesting because this is a farm woman born like in the late 1800s or so. And she had both rickets and osteoporosis. Now you'd say, how can you have rickets in this day and age? But many people still do. It turns out that she didn't get outside a lot because she was very responsible for a whole house that had farmers working there and the shopkeepers. It's a very different kind of life. In fact, I once asked her, your audience will find this interesting. She was 100 years old. My sister and I interviewed her. We said, Grandma, what do you think of all the changes you've seen? We asked her 2 questions. First we said, what was it like to grow up when you were a woman? And you know what she said? She said, let me think about that and come back tomorrow. We came back tomorrow and she said, I thought about it. And when I was growing up, being a woman was just like being a slave. Now, this was a time when the slaves were just this. She knew the Civil War. I mean, this was like very current in their lifetime. She heard stories of that. And that was always striking to me, the difference we see today, the great luxury we have in a certain sense of having a certain sense of autonomy, even though we aren't quite on, par with men, but it was pretty remarkable. It was pretty remarkable. So I was really struck because of her fracture and the fact that I, as a smart person, didn't even realize she had both rickets. That's where you get bowed legs.
Yeah.
She had fractured her wrist. She had fractured her collarbone, all the typical kind of things you do before you actually fracture a hip. And so I got very interested in bone health. And then that led me to write the book, Better Bones, Better Body, to form the website, betterbones.com, which is the biggest website in the world on natural bone health, 1,000 articles, hundreds of videos. But then one big step to bone health is to alkalize. You see, the chemistry is very important to bone health. And it's a long story about the many roles that bone fulfill in the body. But if you're too acid, you're going to weaken bone to buffer those acids. So a big part of the Better Bones is the alkaline diet. That's how I got interested in the alkaline diet.
So explain a bit more about exactly what the alkaline diet is and how it can be simple in tweaking just a few things so that we can achieve the optimal health.
Well, okay. The first thing is to understand just a tad bit about pH, right? pH is the balance between acid and alkaline. And acid is actually free hydrogen ions. So it's a chemical situation where you need a balance between the acids in the body and the alkaline in the body. The body can't afford to be too acid. The blood has to be slightly alkaline. Remember, your pH scale goes from 0 to 14, 7.34. That's like it has to be a very specific pH. And if it varies too much, you die quickly. And so the bone is there as a great storehouse of mineral compounds to draw on if you get too acid, because it can buffer that acidity. So the alkaline diet is a diet that gets your blood at a pH where everything functions better. And how do we get an alkaline diet? By eating high mineral foods. You probably know the high mineral foods, like lots of vegetables, hopefully organic vegetables that are high in mineral content, lots of as many fruits as you feel comfortable with, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, beans, legumes, particularly not legumes, but lentils and these pulses, those kind of proteins. That is a mineral rich diet is an alkaline diet. We say you start out with 2 cups of vegetables for lunch and dinner. Maybe a serving of 3 or 4 fruits a day. Nuts and seeds a serving. Learn to use the herbs and spices, which are great antioxidants. First used to preserve food. Like you're from England, they have lots of herbs because it helps to preserve the food, to make it easier to digest also. So an alkaline diet is basically just the same diet that's great to protect from cancer, heart disease, diabetes, but it's tilted in such a way that you want to focus on the minerals because you want the blood pH to be in the optimum range. And why is that important? Because if you just have a little tilt to acidity, your enzymes aren't going to work so well. You aren't going to produce protein. It's a very sophisticated thing. The body is amazing.
Yes.
And it does have a chemistry to it that we don't appreciate. And so we say, well, I'll have this sandwich for lunch. I'm in a rush. I'll have a tuna sandwich with some pickle or something. We are not hungry anymore, but we are not giving the minerals that our genetic machinery is attuned to. As an anthropologist, you can't help but realize that we spent hundreds of thousands of years evolving this body to a particular types of foods. And it doesn't change quickly. It doesn't change. We have to have high potassium. We have to have high magnesium. We have to have plenty of minerals, plenty of calcium. So the alkaline diet is basically a whole foods diet with enough protein, but not too much, and largely vegetable based, but it's tweaked in such a way that your chemistry becomes perfect, and how you can test it. Like this book, the Acid Alkaline Food Guide, explains all about the chemistry of pH and which foods alkalize. If you go to Alkaline for Life, you can find a chart that talks about which foods alkalize. Basically the fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, but there's some exceptions. And you can see that, yeah, that you can actually adjust your diet, and then you can measure your pH. You can see how you're doing by looking at the first morning urine.
Mm. And do you use a litmus stick or something?
Yes, exactly. You use a pH paper, and it's nice. You want to get one. Use a pH paper. In fact, we have developed the whole kit. You like a paper that has kind of fine gradients, like 5.5, 5.8, because you want to see kind of real specifically. You just urinate first morning. You expose, you wet that paper with urine, and you're looking for a 6.5 to 7.5 pH, and that tells you probably have enough minerals.
Mm.
It's a really fun thing to do. We have a kit. We have a pH starter kit, Alkaline for Life. You can see, you might say, my diet is great. I think I'm fine. I think I have enough minerals to do everything I need to do, particularly to maintain bone during menopause, because the average woman is going to lose 10% of her bone mass, and many women lose 20% in those 5 years around menopause. Having a good pH will help. Yeah, so people get the pH test kit, the starter kit. They can see it on Alkaline for Life, and you can find out. You can find out how your diet is providing minerals.
So I also understand that our water plays a role in this as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, water, we're 70% water. So water plays a role in everything. And water is an extremely important nutrient that we sometimes overlook. And you remember, some of you, I'm sure some of the listeners have lived in places where they said it's hard water. You know,
yes,
we don't like this because it's hard water. Well, the hard water means it's got of minerals. It's got calcium, magnesium. In fact, you're from England. So, you know, in Europe, they sell mineral water from the Alps, very high mineral. It can be either high mineral water, medium mineral water, low mineral water. When they bring it to America, they don't put too many high mineral waters because people aren't used to it. It's kind of a stronger water. Water is very important. The waters we get in the US, a different story, right? Because they're all chlorinated. We don't have those great mountains that the water flows through for hundreds of years and collects a great amount of minerals. Europe is famous for its mineral water. Water is important, but it's more complicated. You might say, well, I saw in my store that they had an alkaline water. Well, that doesn't do the trick. You need a water that actually delivers minerals. Do you want me to talk more about that? Or
yes,
yeah.
Yes, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's you know, we know that real mineral water, like you can see these European mineral waters, they actually will tell you how much calcium, how much magnesium, how much carbonate, and how many total dissolved solids. That's what the minerals that's in that water. We don't have that water naturally in this country, so it's expensive. You can buy bottles from Europe, but so people have said, well, I'm going to sell alkaline water. So they just change the pH of water. They just make it a little less acid by removing some of the hydrogen ions, but it doesn't deliver minerals. So if I challenge anyone, if someone says, hey, I love my alkaline water, I'm paying $3 a bottle for, well, you just go and see, does it change your pH? Do you have the perfect first morning urine, 6.5 to 7.5? Does it add minerals? I've written a nice article on alkaline waters. And actually what we propose is to remineralize the water, which you can do it with some these mineral. We like to remineralize the water actually with a little bit of zinc, a little bit of potassium, a little bit of calcium, a little magnesium, and that's in the form of a buffered vitamin C salt, an ascorbate. You see, vitamin C takes us on a whole nother tangent of the fact that we evolved on lots of vitamin C because we're just like those monkeys. We were out eating all sorts of fruits and vegetables. Basically, you know, we're talking about a diet that it's our human lineage diet. That's what we're talking about. A diet high in fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, whole fresh foods with a lot of antioxidants. We make alkaline water with this with a particular powdered vitamin C that's packed under nitrogen and buffered with minerals. You can see it on Alkaline for Life. We actually have a kit that people can make their own alkaline water. That's a great idea. And that water you have right there, you could put lemon juice in it. You could put some alkalizing compounds in there.
Mhm. So tell us, what are some of the common myths about the alkaline diet?
Well, if people have studied a little bit, they'll say, oh, I can't have protein because protein is acid forming. If we look carefully, we'd say, sure, protein is acid forming, because just like when we digest protein, we produce sulfuric acid, just like if we were burning coal in the atmosphere. It's the same process. However, the body needs protein, and it's only excess protein that causes an acid condition. So you want to stick to maybe 60 grams of protein a day. You don't want to do really high protein unless you have some strong exercise program or something. So it's good to know that you can and should eat protein, just not too much. Some people get very worried about things like coffee because they're somewhat acid forming, but small amounts are probably okay. And it's a question of balance. It's like, if you're in great health, you could say, well, all I really need is 60% of alkalizing food and 40% of acid forming food. That would be more proteins, more beans. Maybe a person even wanted to do a little alcohol, which is very acid forming, or a little coffee. But you keep that in balance. Now, if you're trying to regain health, or if you're losing bone, or you have cancer, you want to do like 80% alkaline and maybe just 20% acid forming. So it depends on the health status. But I'd say to everyone, and it's a pretty big challenge, get 2 cups of vegetables for lunch, 2 for dinner. I try to get some for breakfast because sometimes I eat a light dinner. I mean, we just have to, like, you have a lovely background behind you. You just have to get out there, get those vegetables, see what's grown locally, and try to eat more fresh whole foods.
So I know that when we're researching things like this, most of us tend to go to Dr. Google. So I believe in your world, you even talk about how Dr. Google gets it wrong.
Well, Dr. Google is quite varied. You know, I mean, there's so many different opinions. Even the doctors get a little confused because it's really just the kidney specialists who understand pH. pH is it's a pretty subtle thing. I mean, the body automatically maintains pH. So a doctor will say, don't worry, you can't get too acid. If you get too acid, you're just going to die, and the body won't let that happen. But what the body does is compensate for even a slight tilt to acidity by taking nutrients out of muscle. You will lose muscle and you will lose bone if you're too acid, as well as your enzymes aren't going to function well. The protein won't be produced well. There's many sequelae to just a slight acidic tilt that the body can manage. So that's kind of a misconception, thinking, well, it's not really important. And it's one of these interesting things that some of my clients get really worried. They say, oh, I was nice and alkaline, then I went out and had pizza at my kid's birthday party and I got acid, and they get worried. But that's okay. It's like we're looking at the big picture. We're looking at the lifetime. If you want to preserve muscle, if you want to preserve bone, if you plan to live a long time, that's when you should pay attention to pH. And that's also when you should pay attention to bone. The average person could probably live okay till 70, not break anything too much. But if you want to live a long time, you want strong infrastructure, and you want to have strong muscles, strong bones. You want to have that manufacturing plant producing new proteins. So yeah, if you take the long-term view, you might say, hey, it's worth it. Plus, there's a lot of disease prevention that can happen if we got back to eating the way our genetic machinery is designed.
So I know for many people, they see the acidity with the way that their digestive system works.
Yes.
I know my husband had an ulcer a couple of years ago around the time he was having heart issues, and I know he had to rebalance his whole system. So what do people do when they have these digestive issues? Well,
it's really interesting because a lot of people, you mean perhaps have like a lot of acid in their stomach. They have like a lot of reflux. Well, it's a very good thing to just move to the alkaline diet. In other words, you'd have fresh vegetables and eat very simply. So what I encourage people, maybe take a few vegetables. If they feel that this winter squash is good, they cook it up. First place, cooked food is easier to digest than raw food. So I take a series of alkalizing foods and I would cook them up, whether it was squash or whether it was turnips or whether it was making a lovely a soup of these carrots and vegetables and whatnot. And I would eat simply to see alkaline. And I think many, many times the people's acid gets much, much better, as well as the commons. As soon as we cut out some of the processed foods and things that people react to, like the dairy and the wheat and the soy and all these processed foods. Yeah, just to do that, fruit, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And you might experiment with one food at a time. Like if your husband had reflux, you might say, well, can I just have this winter squash cooked up? Maybe with a little ghee on it. Is that okay? Or do I get reflux from that? There's many different manifestations, but basically to do the alkaline foods and eat them in a really easy to digest form for a while. Now you're in Florida, you might say, I gotta have hot. I can't eat hot food, it's too hot. I'll tell you, in South America, I worked a lot in South America. They'll sit there eating soup in 100 degrees, sweating away because they appreciate the fact that it's good for it's easier to digest. But if your digestion's fine, go ahead, have the raw food. But see, sometimes certain types of food really cause a lot of reflux. But many, many people, their digestion gets greatly better just following the simple guidelines. And if anyone wants the guidelines, just go to alkalineforlife.com or even betterbones.com. We have lots of articles and lists of which foods acidify and which foods alkalize.
Great.
And then, of course, there's the book. The book is in many languages, very popular. The Acid Alkaline Food Guide.
And where can they find the book?
They can find the book in the stores. They can certainly, we appreciate it when people buy it from us because we have a foundation, the Leading Edge Research, where we're trying to encourage all of us to live a healthier lifestyle, to reduce this burden of degenerative disease, which 80% of the population now suffers from. So Alkaline for Life, that's our website. You can buy the book and you can buy the products. If you say, here's the real one big takeaway. If you do your first morning urine, say you say, okay, I'm going to get Dr. Brown's little kit. I'm going to measure my first morning urine. If it's not 6.5 to 7.5, then you know you're low in minerals, particularly magnesium. And so this, you just keep in mind, magnesium, extremely important, really overlooked nutrient. If your pH is low, it's a mineral deficit, largely magnesium. So you can see there's a series of minerals that we use, and we also alkalize with ascorbate. Let me put a pitch for this, because vitamin C is this amazing antioxidant that in decades past was shown to heal any flu, any virus, hepatitis, polio in very high doses. I've written about these studies, these pioneers decades ago when they first discovered how to make vitamin C. It's quite remarkable. So we have a form of vitamin C that alkalizes because it's not vitamin C ascorbic acid, it's ascorbate, and ascorbate will alkalize. So yeah, if dig into it and learn about it, it's so amazing. Such a rich heritage of really giants like Albert St. George and Linus Pauling, who really studied these nutrients and helped us see the really healing benefits that we forget now as we look, well, let me just take a pill for this problem. We're all about understanding the problem and working to regain and regenerate health.
And so I know that stress probably plays a huge part in getting us out of balance.
Right, exactly. In fact, when we get stressed out, when a person worries or a person has a stress, you actually produce cortisol. That cortisol is really that fight or flight hormone and epinephrine, and that actually produces a great deal of acid. That's exactly right. I've had clients, you can see, if you follow my work, you'll see some of the videos, a client who said, I was nice, I finally got alkaline, I was doing great. Then I had this prolonged stress for 3 or 4 days. She said, I let it get to me. She realized that she was internalizing, she turned acid again. And then when she started to meditate, started to let go of that, had to do a few more minerals, a little more ascorbate. Yeah, there is not a health problem. I personally believe if we dig deep enough, we'll find every health problem related to stress, because it throws the whole energy of the body out.
Yes. So do tell people, where is the best place to find you?
Well, they can always come to Syracuse, but here's what happens. Now with COVID, we started doing some fun things. Like I say, at Alkaline for Life, we have many articles about pH balance and many articles about current health situations. Alkalineforlife.com is also where it's alkaline, FORlife.com. That's also where we sell these professional grade, a handful of products that help people alkalize, and our test kits. So people can get a little inexpensive test kit and see what's happening. Then the women who are in menopause and say, gosh, I should pay attention, my message to them would be, I got interested in all of this because I realized that I was losing bone by what the dentist told me of receding gums and even periodontal disease. And that's when I took a deep dive and said, wow, my grandmother fractured. I have early signs. I got to get to it. So I wrote betterbones.com. I've written 1,000 articles on bone health at betterbones.com. You can learn about anything you want. We have hundreds of videos. Just look up Susan Brown YouTube. Have some fun with it. Let us know what you found interesting. And you know what? Here's my final message. I've been doing this a long time, and I'll tell you, no one cares about your health as much as you do. And if you do not take responsibility, somebody else is going to have their way with you. And so you really have to decide, am I going to learn? Am I going to step up to the bat? Am I going to take charge, or just take whatever drug the doctor tells me I should take?
Well, I appreciate you so much and all this great information. And I know I'll be really honing in on some people I know that really are dealing with this issue. This is a great episode to share with them.
Thank you. And as you close, let me say my really commitment is to expand understanding. And so we are giving these retreats, these online retreats, particularly people interested in bone health, and they can find it at betterbones.com, where I give, it's 4 days of lecture, and we have my whole staff there answering questions. It's virtual now. We used to do it in person, but it's a great opportunity to take charge and learn the whole alkaline diet and much more. Thanks
Great.
a lot.
Thanks so much, Dr. Brown. Appreciate you being with us today.
You stay cool. You stay cool down there in Florida.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.